Scott, coming back to you and shifting gears again, if we talk about implementation, we've talked a lot about in this session or in these workshops so far, we've talked quite a bit about what some of the success factors are. We've talked about change management, strategy, all kinds of different stuff. How would you summarize what you think is most important for your customers to be successful in their transformations, their ERP implementations in general?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake we see, I mean, and I don't think it's any secret to anyone at this event, is just the lack of upfront preparation for the implementation, right? So, a lot of over-reliance on the vendor to steer them to a system integrator, over-reliance on the system integrator to give them a statement of work that is going to be, fulsome and really cover off in enough detail all the different components of the implementation. More, and I think the paper is getting worse. I mean, I literally see screenshots of resource allocation estimates for SOWs that are illegible. You can't even read them. And then you say, well, did you go through a phase zero process? Have you gone through this advanced planning? How did you help inform the implementer to come up with these numbers? And there's nothing there, right? So that means these numbers have just been based on some semblance of historical projects that the vendor's probably done, and then a lot of guesswork. But it's a recipe for change order hell. And so I think, the other component to the upfront planning is really the planning internally for the organization. You touched on it. It's program management. It's having an executive sponsor that understands your business and understands enough about technology to be an effective advocate for the project, the ability to prepare the organization for what's coming. Can't tell you how many times I ask, how are you going to staff this project? You're going to have to pull your best people out of the business to run the project. You're still going to have to run the business, and they don't have an answer. Data is a huge issue. You can almost guarantee that if they haven't done any upfront work, you're going to run into that. You start working on the data migration, the data integration, and you're going to hit a roadblock. And as we know, then you have to keep the meter running on the consultants, or you're going to lose the resources while you take whatever 6 weeks, 6 months, however long to fix the data. That's how these projects just start to grow exponentially. And I mean, that's just off the top of my head. I mean, there's so many ways these projects can go wrong. I think if you're not taking up front, in many cases, at least 6 months to plan what you're going to do for the project, you're kind of just preparing, or you're defaulting into failure mode.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I had a psychology, not a psychologist, but someone who had studied psychology that was on my podcast one time, and she talked about how human behavior, there's something called action bias, and people feel like they have to take action. And if I'm doing my phase zero planning, I'm not taking action. Like, these guys want me to sign a contract, and they want to start designing and building the software that I can see and touch and feel, but the planning, I can't. I don't feel like I'm taking action. And why not? Why take those 6 months if I can spend that 6 months designing and building stuff instead?
It's counterintuitive. It's like you have to go slow to go fast.
Yeah.
So, I used to play a lot of tournament poker, and it's like, if someone's showing strength at the table, there's a good chance they're probably bluffing, right? They want me to buy into that, I'm scared of this hand. It's very counterintuitive, and it's a hard sell to executive management a lot of time to say, look, if we don't take the time to do these things the right way, it's going to cost us, downstream in both implementation time and definitely in money. But I think in order to make that sale upstream, you have to be able to articulate what that looks like, right? So you have to be able to explain the why behind, what you're asking for. It's going to help to get help early. So, firms like yours and others that can come in and kind of, help you map out that process and map out your pitch upstream. That's a critical piece of the puzzle, because most of the time, people are running the business. How many times, hopefully, do you do one of these big ERP implementations? Maybe, if you're lucky, once in your career. If you're unlucky, 2 or 3 times for the average worker. Like, there's
Right.
Obviously you guys who love it and live it, and that's what you do. But most people hate it. And it's very disruptive, and it's painful. And it's like, if I have my job, all of these things are laid out, and now you're telling me everything's going to change. that's not going to make me a happy camper as as a worker. And you have to prepare for that up front.
Yeah.
I think, if I may, those are really great points, and you said some things earlier in your session, the Welcome to the Jungle session, that really caught my eye, Eric. The why is really important. You're not implementing a new ERP system because you want to implement a new ERP system. You're doing it because you've seen something that's not going well enough, or something that's getting in your way with what you want to achieve for the business. And so you're identifying a new system, and you're going to go through this journey, let's say, through this journey to get to an outcome which allows you to achieve that why, that intent that you started this process for. And so it is really important to have your best people. It is, got to make sure that you've got the time for that. And then the other thing that I saw on your slides earlier on is that implementing new software is not itself going to fix the problems that you embrace in this process. Look for, but the reality is that whatever your business process is today, it is almost, at least to some degree, the result of how your current systems work. It's not because that's how you would have decided to do it if you had, a blank slate at the beginning of whatever evolution or new initiative you had most recently. It's because that's how your current setup actually requires you to do this thing. And so thinking that taking that and putting it, in our case, in the cloud, on the suite, leveraging AI in another system in exactly the same way as you're currently doing it is not going to help you achieve that why. So holding on to why you're doing this, it's not just because you want to have implemented a new ERP system on your resume. It's because there's a goal that you're looking to achieve for the business.
Right.
And driving to that at all points along the way.
I want to call it what Scott also, I think, mentioned, just about preparing for the change, right? So you mentioned the processes, right? A lot of this isn't just the technology, right? You need, we're dealing with tariffs, we're dealing with economic issues, right? Change is a normal now. And I think, to your point, you're not going to rip and replace your ERP system out every time it changes, right? But you need to prepare your people, your culture, your processes, your governance to adapt to that change. We know it's going to happen. It's coming. So, have those kind of pieces in place besides the technology. I think that's going to better prepare you, right, as you implement kind of your initial solution.